Okay, welcome, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, to this week's episode of Buffy Boys. I am one half of the host, Joel, and you are...
Brian, hi.
And this week we are...
I don't like that.
Which?
The one half of the host you said like 5 times now. I have no idea what it's meant to mean.
This means we're a unit, we're a single entity together which hosts this show, and we only work together. This isn't a one-man operation.
Okay. If you think that's a great joke, good enough to repeat 5 times.
I feel like this is a very cavalier attitude from someone who has caused us to start 10 minutes late because you were looking at pictures of dogs that you wanted to rescue.
They weren't just dogs, it was greyhounds, so it was your fault.
So I'm sitting here, Brian has his headphones on, he's getting his audio levels right, he's configuring everything, he's a really focused look. I'm like, okay, I'll wait here patiently because he's obviously tinkering to make sure we have the best episode we possibly can have. And after about 10 minutes I said to him, are you ready to go? And he's like, I want to adopt all of these dogs.
Well, you see, that's not fair, okay? Like, in suggesting that I could be tinkering with things to make it the best possible audio episode that I can do would indicate that the problems are coming from my laptop and not yours.
Very good, very good. Okay, let's have a very not funny, not creative, heterosexual opening. Good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of the podcast Buffy Boys. I am one of the co-hosts. My name is Joel. I'm here with another co-host. What is your name?
Brian.
Okay, so this week we're going to be watching and reviewing the episode. I really can't remember how many, what number we're on yet.
Oh,
11?
yeah, it's season 2, episode 11.
Season 2, episode 11. Ted. I'm excited about this episode. It is trash and I love it, and it's one of my favourite early episodes of Buffy.
Did you know that TED is actually an acronym?
Of? No, it's not.
It is. The Enormous Dickhead.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
So...
It was first aired on December 8, 1997.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed by Bruce Seth Green, who you've had a million times before, and was written by David Greenwald and Joss Whedon. Joss, what are you doing?
Some classics. So this is, before we get into the Buffy Ann summary for the episode, this is the one where Buffy's mother, Joyce, gets a new boyfriend who turns out to be a misogynist dickhead, and he is also a robot. That is the episode.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. So Joyce's forceful new suitor takes against his potential stepdaughter. They fight, and she apparently kills him. He returns good as new and keen to kill her. Ted is actually a robot into whom his creator downloaded his mind and his 50s attitude to women. Buffy and the gang rescue Joyce from him. That's giving a lot of credit to the gang when they did fucking nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of jaunty, and it also, I suppose, in terms of summarising the things that doesn't cover, that does explain what happens in the episode. It also pretty much just repeats a monologue that Xander has in the last 4 minutes, where he basically says, here's all the backstory we didn't fit into the episode for what's actually happening, where 90% of the episode is basically just noted character actor John Ritter being really sexist and abusive towards Buffy and her mother, and has a lot of stuff in it as well about Giles and Jenny trying to repair their relationship, and a couple of notes of some other things. But anyway, it's for all the will in the world, it is a monster of the week episode for sure.
It sure is. Quick note, there's a literal festival happening somewhere in the region of 100 meters away from our apartment.
Mm-hmm. Music festival, not craft festival.
Yeah, exactly. That happens in Dublin City every year in the summer, and we've had to put up with the ever increasingly younger and younger drugged up children wandering around our apartment complex, but there will almost certainly be a bunch of noise coming from it, so apologies.
Yeah, these fruits are not sufficiently forbidden for my tastes, but the kids attending these concerts these days are just 3 children on top of each other's shoulders in a crop top. Like, it is terrifying how young they are.
Oh yeah, that's awful.
It couldn't possibly be that we're getting older. So if any of that leaches into our podcast, I will open my window and I will tell those gosh darn kids to get the fuck off my lawn.
Yeah, well, if we're going to open our windows and start shouting at anyone, it should probably be the guy who was entirely naked in his room last night, like fooling around with someone and just like not bothering to close his blinds, who lives just across from us. If you listen to us, shame on you.
We did no, not shame on you, not for the naked part.
No, shame on you for like not being aware that everyone can fucking see you.
Particularly when we shouted out of our window, close your blinds. But
I did that. You did not.
Well, we were together. We were in it together. We were both trying to solve the problem. And maybe a big long stick that we could tie together. This is the end of my Twilight Zone episode. Be careful what you wish for, because like of all my complaints about the show Friends, I literally had a moment last night where I had to come into you and I was like, Brian, you know that naked guy who's always across the way? He has a naked friend with him.
Yeah.
And so that was
the thing that happened.
Sentence went nowhere. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was no good. So, Brian, what incredibly interesting and discussable things have you done with your weekend? Because I could talk about the practical project management course I did, but maybe you have something else you want to talk about.
No, not really.
Okay.
We went to see Booksmart last night. It was so good.
So Booksmart is the
Olivia Wilde's directorial debut, who was in House as the character 13, and she was in other things. Tron Legacy and other things.
But this is the, getting great reviews. It's being marketed as the girls' version of Superbad, which, to be honest, I think undersells it.
Agreed.
But it does happen to feature as one of the main characters the woman who everyone seems to remember as the best friend from Lady Bird. I've seen Lady Bird. I'm not. This isn't a significant signifier for me, but she's Jonah Hill's sister as well, and a couple of fresh faces, and of course Lisa Kudrow is in a couple of scenes. But yeah, so it's basically like your coming of age teen drama, but it's it's smart, it's feminist, it's very queer, it's just funny, and no one gets punished in it, and it's not gross out.
Yeah, it's true.
It was a lot of fun. I think it's actually a good counterpoint what we're kind of talking about or looking at with Buffy, because it's it's like about two women, it's from a genuinely believable feminist and queer perspective, and it was good. It was good stuff, and also we were kind of drunk watching it, so that helped as well.
Yeah, we found out that we can bring beers into the cinema, very cheap beers from the cinema. You can bring them into the movie. It was great. What was really nice about Booksmart was that it was just, there's so few movies about queer teens, and this was so unabashedly that, and had jokes about it, but didn't portray it as being this major issue for the character, because there's a lesbian character as one of the two main characters, and that was just a real relief. If I had something like that to watch when I was younger, it'd be really nice.
Yeah, and I think it was an interesting one, because I think there are some areas of media in which gay men are overportrayed. Overportrayed is probably the wrong word, but disproportionately portrayed in terms of members of the community.
Sure.
And there's some areas in which they're disproportionately underportrayed, and very often, video games or certain kinds of TV shows where things go well for people, and it tends not to be gay men. There are often situations where it's more comfortable from the writer's perspective to put two women in. It's a complicated situation, but to be fair, I actually think it's quite rare to have a well-developed and comfortable queer woman in a teen drama like this. That felt like very new ground and very welcome ground.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So yeah, I thought it's definitely worth seeing. It's definitely worth seeing if you can be a little bit drunk while you're watching it as well.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Some really good needle drops in it as well. There was 2 Perfume Genius songs in it, and Lizzo was in it and stuff. So it was actually, the music in it was quite good. I liked it. Yeah,
I always find teen films are a great way of reminding me how many decades out of music understanding I am. It's it feels like it's just a completely foreign territory for
your
me.
Music knowledge peaks in the 80s, and it's not even that good for the 80s.
Look, we went to a new gay bar last night, and they were playing Cher, and I was very happy with that. So
they weren't playing Cher in the new one, were they?
They did at one point, yeah.
Oh, I thought they would play that in Panty Bar.
They did also play it in Panty Bar. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Okay, well, this episode was not good for my money's worth.
No, you couldn't extract or distill any gems from it?
No, not really. It's okay. So I did my general research stuff where I went and looked for various information sources about this episode, about people discussing it and stuff, and no one does that. No one has discussed this episode, essentially, because it's not very fertile ground. The best thing about the episode is that line that Jaws has near the beginning, where he says, "Buffy, I believe the subtext here is rapidly becoming a text."
Yeah, it definitely has to be one of the episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer which wears its point is trying to make, not even on its sleeve, but like a magician trying to pull something out of his sleeve and it's just falling on the ground. Like it's just all just there. It's literally, they're like, we need to have a scene where he, seems perfect, but then he's mean to her, and then there's a policeman, and the policeman's like, can you prove that he hit you? And it's like, no, these are all important things to be done well, but they kind of took everything out of the box of how we portray an abusive man and put it all in one episode,
Yeah.
Now, what I will say, positives off the bat about this episode. John Ritter.
Yeah, he's great.
Noted character actor John Ritter, sadly no longer with us. And I was discussing probably one of the most externally famous people to be in the show at this time, probably best well known for being one of the main stars of Three's Company, which is a seminal American sitcom. He
was in 8 Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter a little bit later, and he died.
It was the last thing he was in.
Yeah.
And you would know his voice from just loads of things. He does a good turn, I think, as a villain, because I think he's probably seeing going into his episode as an all-American father. Apparently, the whole thing about him being a good cook is a bit of an oblique reference to him being a chef on Three's Company. And,
cool.
And all that kind of stuff. So that was good. Just, if you're going to have someone do it, have it be John Ritter. I think this episode still stands up for me in some respects because it makes me the most uncomfortable of some of the Buffy episodes. I still get so queasy about the whole thing of, him being domineering to Buffy and people not believing her and him threatening her. It just makes me really uncomfortable in a way that's like appropriately uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that does that well. It gives you that discomfort, but I don't think it handles it well ultimately as the episode. I think it's just kind of like it uses it as a note and then kind of just like moves on without exploring any of the actual implications. And
the issue is in some ways that it's limited by the premise of a TV show, because it does some interesting stuff where it's trying to say, and Buffy always remains on the fact that Buffy is not Superman, and the problem with Superman as a character is he has no flaws, and so much of Superman lore is trying to introduce flaws, but as a base character he doesn't. Buffy continues to have the limitations that women have in the world in many respects, and what Buffy always tries to point out is that her superpowers give her certain advantages, but they're not ones that allow her to lose the feminine experience. So she has advantages that gives her a bit of a boost, but not enough to get around these problems because they are so pervasive. So it's a good episode, I think, for showing that Buffy still does so much of the teenage girl experience. They for the first time really hung in on this thing I've mentioned a couple of times about her killing a human, what the consequence of that is. But because it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and because it is a fantastical universe, and because she has to go on being the Vampire Slayer, at the end he turns out to be a robot and everyone just kind of forgets about it. That, if that was the last episode of the TV show and she went to prison, like, that would be a controversial, very strong ending to the show, but you can't do that. Like, she has to go on and be the Vampire Slayer. And people don't really mention it again as a joke, but like, I think Buffy underplays that if you think you've killed a man, even if it turns out he was a robot, I think that trauma still happens.
Yeah.
Buffy doesn't really acknowledge trauma unless it has consequence. Like any time that someone gets killed, or if it's Angel or Tara or any of that kind of stuff, there's always the concept that if you can bring them back, it's okay. But like the trauma, the actual bruising, Buffy doesn't always acknowledge, doesn't go away when the consequences go away, if you get what I'm trying to say.
I'd agree, yeah. No, you're right. It's an interesting one. The thing is that they have to deal with kind of hard-hitting themes on a week-to-week basis, but they do it with the like Monster of the Week episodes.
Yes,
and those have like floating timelines essentially. A lot of the Monster of the Week episodes are run and gun. It's just like it happened, and they might refer to it later on, but they're not really care. They don't really care about it.
Even in this episode, when so you have some development of the Giles and Jenny relationship, where Jenny's still traumatized by having been possessed by Igon, the sleepwalker, and a couple of weird things with that. One is she was like, I haven't had any mortal danger in 3 weeks, and it's like 3 weeks. If you had told me that was 3 months or a day ago, I would have been like, easily that's possible.
Well, it's because it was 3 episodes ago.
Yes, no, I get that, like, having heard it, but it's weird for it to acknowledge specific timelines in some ways.
Yeah, I agreed.
But exactly what we were saying there is, it's almost like Jenny doesn't get with the program by like having trauma from this experience. It's like, no, but like the icon went away, so you're not allowed to be still upset about it, in the structure of the program to a certain degree. Like, people are just meant to collect these, like Xander being like almost like raped by a mantis woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just a funny anecdote that he's collected, like a funny story from college when he got really drunk, and that's how you're meant to do it a little bit. And Jenny's like, no, that was really traumatic, I don't want to do that again, to some degree.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because Jenny's like seen in that we were kind of saying, oh, she's kind of mean there a little bit to Giles, but like, was she, in the sense that, like, so what happens is that Giles goes to check up on Jenny just to see how she's doing, and he's like, oh, I was bringing these books back from the library because they got delivered to me. And she's like, oh, that's a weak excuse to come see me, kind of thing. And then she kind of implies that he hasn't been to see her since everything happened. And then further says that he's always popping up with his puppy dog eyes and stuff like this. And that she needs like some space to not feel bad about making him feel bad, essentially. And like, honestly, that's kind of fair. Like, if you get possessed by a demon because specifically in relation to Giles' actions, then take some space and say, sorry, I don't want to talk to you right now. That's fine.
Yeah, no, of course, that's definitely fine, and that's totally reasonable. I suppose my hesitation with thinking that Jenny is harsh, and I will point out she does agree with me later in the episode, is she's a techno-pagan. She has some exposure to the supernatural world, and she also has inserted herself in these situations a lot, so she's not a bystander the way Joyce is. She's actively kind of chosen to be part of this horrific layer of Sunnydale, you know?
But if you'll remember, like, I mean, the Mark of Igon issue was specifically because of Giles's actions. You know, like the reason that demon existed was because Giles brought him into the world.
Oh yeah, no, it's his fault as much as it's anyone's fault, really, and being around him definitely exposed her to it. It just has certain tones of the dangerous man with the dark past. It's like, oh, I love him so much, but he's dangerous to be around. There's just a touch of that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying it's there, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Another instance of weird continuity, or like unexpected continuity, which I always forget Buffy does, is Angel is still weak from the ritual he did with Drusilla, and she's like bandaging his hand because he got stabbed he got double penetrated with Drusilla, and that's something that Buffy actually generally does quite well. Like, there are state changes that don't, because one of the criticisms of genre TV shows are often the reset button, that at the end of the day the ship has to go forward to the next planet kind of thing, and Buffy doesn't really do that. It always does lean into exchanges, which I appreciate.
I agree, no doubt.
Which I think is interesting, because it's a structure that Buffy doesn't employ, and a lot of genre TV shows does employ. Star Trek to an incredible degree is you literally have an A story, a B story, and sometimes a C and even a D story.
Yeah.
So the A story is the main plot, and then you have two other ensemble characters elsewhere. As actually sitcoms will often do that quite often as well. Yeah. But they might not intersect at all. And generally the best episodes of those shows are the ones where you only have the A story, because everything's come together. And Buffy never does that. Like,
the closest thing that Buffy ever gets to doing that is the Zeppo, in which it's all B plot and nothing but B plot, which is like great, and it's a really interesting way to do it. That's
why it's funny, because for once you're not actually seeing what's happening on the Buffy main stage kind of thing.
I think, but that's like indicating an awareness that Buffy's creators have, in that they tend, like Star Trek and stuff, tend to splinter off their characters so that they can show individual character moments, whereas Buffy knows that it does its best job when it's an ensemble piece. That, you know, if you can highlight one character within the ensemble for one episode or for one arc, but that, like, ultimately the nature of the genre of the ensemble is the strength of the show.
Yeah, and I think other ensemble casts treat their wide number of actors as crayons that they can colour with. But it's never designed to have all 10 or 15 characters in the show in a room at the same time. Whereas Buffy actually it keeps this ensemble cast, its actual core ensemble cast, quite small comparatively. And they are designed to work together, like the heart, the mind, the hand, the body. Do you know what I mean?
You're totally right. I mean, it's actually okay. This is a good analogy for you. So most TV shows use their characters like paints, like colours to be used. You're absolutely right, like crayons. And Buffy uses its character like musical notes. So, like, there's only 8 musical notes in a scale. It'd be crazy to just leave out the B in a song you're playing, because that would make no sense. And you might be able to do it, and might make for an interesting episode, a la, you know, Conversations with Dead People or something like that. Mm-hmm. But, like, ultimately, like, of course you're going to use all the notes in harmony in one episode, because why wouldn't you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you go naturally for paint. I'm like, crayons. And like say, in that same musical analogy, which I think we'll probably return to, because that's a good one, I'll be using that again. You get to a point where it's the body and it's just holding down one high-pitched note for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's not holding it down, it's like jabbing, it's like...
Yeah, that's the disintegration loops.
Disintegration loops, Buffy, yeah, you're right.
So, Brian, tell me what you hated about this episode.
Okay, so a couple of things. Like, it's just, it has no reflection in itself. Like, it wants to bring this thing up, which is like this misogyny and this abuse of women, and the infiltration of the stepfather, that whole trope, and, you know, the abused stepdaughter, and it doesn't explore that in any depth whatsoever. It just kind of says, here it happens, Buffy does something about it, that's bad apparently, kind of, not really, and then it gets solved by a deus ex machina, literally.
Very good.
Thank you. So it's just like, yeah, it doesn't have much depth for me. I don't think it's like, I enjoy watching it. It's one of the episodes I remember best from this season. Like Bad Eggs, I don't remember that well, which is coming up next week, by the way.
Which one is that?
Bad Eggs is when they take eggs home from school and they're actually parasites.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking forward to that.
But it's so bad. It's so monster of the week.
Yeah.
But Ted is just like, it's very memorable. But I always remember it as being like, weirdly dark in the middle for no real reason.
Like cinematography wise.
No, thematically, like after Buffy's killed the guy and everyone's looking at her in school being like, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, okay. The problem there is Buffy as a show has these notes to play with, and it doesn't always lean on them very heavily. And the problem with Ted, I think, is it suddenly pressed all the notes on the piano at once on this particular issue. Do you know?
Yeah.
And they go a very interesting place with it, but like I said, the fact that they have to pull back so heavily by the end kind of diminishes it to a certain degree. Like, basically, so she's, Ted confronts her, and there's this really, and I think the audience really feels that this invasion of privacy, because he is obviously, I think the thing about him coming as a stepfather and like taking away her mother's attention, like that's uncomfortable, but it's a bit trite to a certain degree. Like
sure.
we've seen that story. When it goes a little bit further and he is kind of, derogatory to Buffy, there's a misogyny, there's I don't take orders from women, he breaks into her room, he takes her diary, threatens to expose her as a slayer and all this, and there's this moment where he would get away with that and has gotten away with that in other families and hicks her, but what she says, which is actually quite like a powerful moment, where she's like, I was really hoping you'd do that so she can beat the shit out of him. That's a relief, but then she gets arrested, she gets interrogated by the police, coroners come and take Ted away. Everyone in school knows that she killed a guy, and then at the end of the episode, so he reactivates because he's a robot, scares an intern in the hospital, funny joke, but then there's no follow-up. Now, we can say, okay, this is a Sunnydale thing, and it's gangs on PCP, and the mayor's in on it, and all that kind of stuff. Fair enough. But as far as Joyce is concerned, as far as Joyce Summers is concerned, at the end of the episode, she's like, oh, Ted was such a creep. I can't believe they found 4 of his ex-wives in his basement. Yeah. Because she does find out that he was a killer.
But not that he was a robot.
Not
and
that he's a robot. But she thinks that a serial killer who habitually marries women and kills them, and who was trying to do that to her, is still out there.
Yeah, and like, if you're a police officer like investigating this, and you find out about the serial killer, and you try to trace back his last moments, what you find is that like a bunch of children murdered him and hid his body somewhere because he's now disappeared after he confronted them,
And then Buffy been like, don't worry, I think he's on the scrap heap. I mean, of life. And they're like, no, you're going to jail. Like, someone's gone missing. So it's weird tonally in that respect. And it does fall into this. It kind of reminds me with Buffy often how in comparison, say, early Doctor Who used to interchange episodes which were science fiction and ones which were historical plays, and they eventually phased out the historical plays. I feel like earlier Buffy used to interchange some of these more kind of B science fiction episodes to some degree. And they really lean more heavily into the kind of soft focus pastel Wicca fantasy as it goes on.
Yeah.
But like this is like there's no magic here. There's just that he was a robot, and that the original Ted in the 50s was a genius inventor, and who made this robot Ted because he was dying and his wife was going to leave him, and he brought the wife back.
His wife left him.
His wife did leave him, and he made a robot to drag her back. She died in this creepy basement version of a 50s apartment that he built
under the magic shop.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point, that it's a set which they don't acknowledge in this episode, but it is the set that eventually becomes the magic shop, which is the main location for the rest of the show. But that's like entirely just that he has great cybernetics, and
I would suggest that actually there is some magic going on there, in the sense that he's not a genius per se. I think he's a Hellmouth as metaphor influence genius.
100%. You're 100% right that, like other robot episodes, of which there are a few in this show, it is that the Hellmouth does the monkey's paw thing of making this possible. But in terms of textual rituals, blood sacrifices, all that kind of stuff, like he cooks open his arm and he's wires inside. From a genre point of view, without getting into the minutiae of quote unquote what happened, it's a robot thing.
No, agreed. No, yeah, you don't. I'm trying to think. Are there specifically tech episodes later on? And yes, if you look at, like, say, it trades on and off. So if you look at the institute is what I'm going to say, but the initiative, very tech heavy. Or then when you look at season 6, the 3 very
Yeah,
tech
definitely.
heavy, so it does go on and off.
But with all of them, the level of technology they have always stays at the level of villains from 1950s golden era comics, because it's like jetpacks or like laser beams or cyborgs. Like, it's not that, it never gets to that granulated kind of modern science fiction thing.
Yeah, they never do a robot in the internet in a proper way. They never do any grey gooey kind of scenarios, obviously,
exactly.
after Malcolm.
They never like capitalize on when technology does actually progress. But I think one of the things that we enjoy about this episode was like Ted's meant to be this amazing computer salesman because he is a robot, and there's so many like heavy clunky foreshadowing where everyone's like, God, he works so hard, turns towards the camera, he's a machine.
Or Joyce being like, every home needs one of you, Ted.
Yeah. Or him saying literally about 4 times, I'm not wired that way. But the thing that's meant to signify to the audience that he's great at computers is he's talking to Willow about her 9 gigabyte hard drive.
Stop. She's like, I love my new 9 gigabyte hard drive.
Yeah, it's like offering her free samples of like extra RAM or something, and like she's just
what was DMA? I don't know what that is. Yeah.
But like Willow was like, oh happy day, and like squealing about
like such genuine squealing. She's like, oh! It was wonderful. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it always reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons from I think late 90s maybe. But anyway, a comic book nerd guy is trying to download like a JPEG of Captain Janeway, and it's like 1 like kilobyte like every minute or so. That's like this era of computers compared to now is the true horror of this episode.
I for one think it's an actual like genuine shame that this is the Joyce episode so far of this show. Like, I can't wait for Band Candy, because I think Joyce is so underutilized as a character in this show in so many ways.
Yeah, because she like even this episode,
she's great in this episode. Christine Sutherland is so good. Sutherland, that's right, isn't it?
Sutherland, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe should look that up.
No, it's Christine Sutherland. She's so good. Like she's so like eye-poppingly like 50s wife of points, and also just like, Buffy, I'm so disappointed in you. Yeah, she was like chewing on his cookies and all that kind of stuff. Like, oh, it's so delicious. Yeah. Important to note that one of the main plots of this episode is that Ted has been drugging everyone to like him, and Willow finds his age by putting a cookie under a microscope and is like, yep, that's some drugs. Yeah, so it's like, oh, his food is so delicious and everyone loves him because he's just a great cook and it's so charming. And they're like, no, the secret ingredient isn't love. It's actually one of the components of ecstasy. He is actually drugging people to be compliant. And I actually think that's quite a funny joke. It is. No, it is. And the way they find out is like Xander goes from being really worried about something to be like really chill after eating a cookie, and then Willow's like, oh, I must put this under my drug microscope. Like it's a bit of a janky transition. Yeah. It is. I think we have to discuss one of the absolute highlights of this episode is Cordelia. Yes, Cordelia is wonderful in this episode. She's much better at being a sleuth than either Willow or Xander. She finds all his information. She does. Found his marriage records and his date of birth and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It's really weird. And she also has a wonderful scene where she gives out to Xander for saying that she had a nice outfit on, and I have to presume he's saying that because he's just had some of the cookies. Yeah, I think when you're aware of that, there's parts of the episode, because initially when I was watching it before I remembered that they're drugged, I was kind of thinking this is slightly problematic because we have the issue of them not believing her, but there is actually an element of them being influenced by Ted. Yeah, no, I mean like Joyce, Willow and Xander are all drugged for this whole episode, so that's why they're being assholes basically. Yeah, absolutely. But because at one point Ted comes along, he's like, oh hey guys, I wanted to bring you all to play some mini golf on Saturday, and Buffy's like, sorry, no, we have a thing, and Willow's like, oh yeah, the thing, and Xander's like, we don't have to do that thing then, let's go play mini golf, I'm in. How memorable is the fact that in the episode Ted they play mini golf? Oh god, it's seared into my memory forever. Seared into my brain. I don't know why that is. But Cordelia, okay, so Xander gives her a compliment. He says nice outfit, and she gives out to him for it. And he's like, well, do you want to just go out, make out in a utility closet? And she's like, oh, okay. And they go off and they make out. But just like Kristen Carpenter's delivery in everything is just so wonderful. Yeah, she's just she's always at a 10. She is. I love her so much. One of the other kind of side notes in our kind of ongoing Buffy watch is religion.
Religion, yes. So Ted, says grace. It's a bit of a cunt during it, to be honest, to Buffy. But anyway, the point is initially he's saying grace, which is not that unusual thing in the nuclear American household. I don't think it's even necessarily an indication of a very 50s mindset. It's just a thing that people do in many homes. But Buffy...
Notably, that does not happen in Ireland. People do not say grace before meals, and we're religious bastards. So
yeah, I think our religion goes deep rather than broad in some ways. Yeah,
it's all about the guilt.
Yeah, exactly. But Buffy has this noted issue with religion, and as a show, it's like really comfortable with cults and sex, but anything that's religious sects, but anything that's like wider, it's really suspicious of.
Yeah, it kind of like in this episode, Buffy gets like put very aggressively like framed against religion, like as a character, because when he says amen and like pointedly makes a little sermon about her, she like doesn't say amen and doesn't eat any of his food. So it's very like much pointing to Buffy as being it's very much pointing to Buffy as being like anti-religious as a character. So
it's just interesting. I think that's a building thing, because the two things that I find Buffy's generally quite suspicious of is religion and guns, and that does kind of return.
So here's one thing. One thing actually, Gay. Josh Ritter is Jason Ritter's father. Jason Ritter.
John Ritter.
Oh, is it John?
Yeah.
Sorry. You're right. Yeah. Josh Ritter is a musician. Jason Ritter was in Parenthood, the TV show, which I've watched a weird amount of. It's not good. Don't watch it. And he's also in... He was in The Class, which was a kind of a Friends light that ran for like 2 seasons in 2005. Mm-hmm. But he also does the voice of Dipper in Gravity Falls.
Yeah, see, I knew the name Josh Ritter.
Yeah. Ted is actually Ted Buchanan, and I have to read that as a Great Gatsby reference. So it has to be a reference to Tom Buchanan, who's Daisy's husband, but he's like a very aggressive guy and very controlling. And apparently he's a white supremacist in the text. I didn't realize that. I haven't read Great Gatsby in years. But I took
that tracks for me, when you think about it. Yeah.
So I have to presume that's a reference to Tom Buchanan, especially 3 letters.
First absolutely. Name. And like, let's see,
50s controlling. Like
the funny thing is that the whole point about his character is he's meant to come off as a very traditional 50s kind of guy and have old-fashioned ideas, and like there's some small elements of that, but it's not really his misogyny that comes off as like 1950s. It's more his like can-do attitude that like seems out of place, because Buffy is obviously such a, like, cynical isn't the word, but like a self-deprecating world.
Yeah, sure.
And he's not that. So I think the writers are trying to portray his attitudes towards women as being backwards for the milieu, and I don't think that actually comes across.
Yeah, I agree.
But if we look at how, subtext and supertext, they have literally, he's built a basement, and in that basement he has, again, basements in Sunnydale, he has done a replica of a 50s apartment. Terrifying moment where they open the blinds and behind to the window, and behind it is just a brick wall. I hate that in anything, And he's keeping all of his ex-wives in the closet. Mm-hmm. Like it's just dripping with this, like, really, like, they bang us over the head with the metaphor here, about the same as Buffy does when she kills him with that cast iron skillet at the end of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, definitely women in the basement. It's I think if nothing else, it's like textually fridging them and like, awaredly fridging these characters, if you get me.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely think it's like a Great Gatsby reference. Sorry, I'm not sure. That was where my brain was still. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
No, it happens in the basement. If we're going to talk more location issues, what happens at the beginning of the episode is that Buffy goes into the episode, or into the hallway of their house, and she tries to open up the door. And when she slips her key into the lock, the door opens itself, essentially indicating that someone's broken in.
Yeah.
Essentially, and that like kind of threshold imagery is really important in Buffy. The kind of the slippage between spaces and the moving across and into different spaces, all very important. So that kind of like, slipperiness of a threshold itself, probably quite indicative of stuff. If we're reading way too much into this, she knocks him down a stairway, and the stairway is often like in Buffy connected with threshold imagery, because there's a bunch of threshold imagery in the photographs on the stairs.
Yeah,
I didn't get a chance to check them in this episode, but I think the photos on the stairs might be thresholds, or they're I can't remember what they are, but she does knock him down, and like that descent is obviously quite like, you know, symbolic of what's happening, and then obviously the basement being the subconscious, etc. So
there's definitely a few permeated thresholds here. One is that and this is just for me, I'm not saying it's intentional, but it's a note, which is that we see Buffy and Joyce in a very underused space in the set, which is standing outside the back door of the kitchen, but which is one which we most often see people breaking in through and vampires coming through and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's just a fascinating knot in Buffy about how humans are both easier and harder to deal with than demons, because that threshold, that front door of Buffy's house, is something that vampires can't come through.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have control over Ted in that same way. And there's also the bit where the guys are totally comfortable with her having killed him because they assume that he was a
creature feature.
Yeah, Xander's like, what's the creature feature? Was he a demon? Was he all these kind of stuff? And she's like, no, he's just a person. And that shifts their perspective. So there's like a slipperiness here, which is hard to hold on to, which I think is really interesting.
You're right. Come here. Am I going crazy, or does Dawn at one point use the phrase feature creature?
Feature creature.
That's creeping into my brain for something. That's
as an opposed to creature feature.
Yeah, she makes a mistake when saying creature feature at one point in the future. Anyway,
could be. Yeah,
we'll look into that.
Just in terms of photographs you mentioned on the stairs as well, I would say that if not that photo, but an evocative and similar one, is the one that Ted has on his desk, which is a picture of Joyce, which Buffy realises very pointedly is a folio over photograph that she was in the other half of. So that's again taking the house, him specifically taking a portion of that house and claiming ownership over it and excluding her from it. It's all
reframing. It's literally
reframing. Perfect, Brian.
Thank you.
Well landed. It's all there.
One thing that I think Ted does represent in terms of interest thematically is that he represents a very, very unmalleable morality. You know, he's like, good is good, right is right. You can't break the rules in mini golf, Joel. And
we've never played mini golf, have we?
We've never played mini golf, Joel. But if I tried to cheat in mini golf, you would sulk.
The rules help structure the fun. I don't know why you don't understand this.
Joel, every so often we play like board games with my family, and I hate it because I hate board games so much. Joel like doesn't understand how we just ignore some of the rules. He's like,
a board game is nothing but a collection of rules. If you're not obeying the rules, you're not playing a board game. You're just wasting your time.
So yeah, Ted represents this I suppose if we're calling back, probably a very Manichaean morality. You know, black and white and no greys. And Buffy constantly represents or exists within the grey existential area of morality in this show.
If you're doing your Buffy Boys bingo card, you can puncture your Manichaeism circle there.
Please don't. What is Parcheesi?
I don't know what the game is, but it's incredibly. It's like
the most 50s thing you can ever exist.
Boggle or Trivial Pursuit. It represents a very like, we don't have a television, let's play Parcheesi.
Okay, I'm looking at it now. It looks like Ludo, an Indian cross and circle game. Okay, now we know. So
one of the things that Ted does to threaten Buffy is reads her diary, finds that she's a Slayer, implies that she's mentally unwell because of it, and says the psychiatrists have a word for this. It's delusional if you don't want to end up in a mental institution, etc. Which, for such a throwaway episode in some ways, is like a really strong undercurrent in Buffy. Obviously, there's specifically an episode later on that, and it's the other episode that Hank appears in, Hank Summers, her father, that shares the fact that she was actually canonically in a mental institution for 2 weeks before she arrived to Sunnydale, and the implication is that she's still there.
Yep.
And they, as you can imagine, in the expanded material, they take that and run with it, and there's a couple of subsequent comics that imply that she is still there, and she only regains her mental stability after Chosen. And after, in the fiction in her head that Sunnydale gets destroyed, she finally destroys it. Then in the real world, quote unquote, she becomes kind of like stable again.
That's interesting.
But like, yeah, there's you can tie so much of that up with hysteria and the concept that hysteria is something that specifically affects women as a Victorian concept. And of course, like all Victorian concepts, actually extending far beyond that, closer to the modern day. But just that women can't be trusted because of this emotionalism, that...
Importantly to note, hysteria coming from like hyster, which it means uterus, like hysterectomy.
Yeah, exactly. So it was specifically a woman's mental disease, essentially, and that, you know, just that women can't be trusted. And this tied up in this episode with the fact that people will it's implied that people believe Ted because he's a salesman, he's an upstanding member of society. Even when she goes to the police and says that he hits her, and the policeman says, "Where did he hit you?" and she says, "So here," and she has him bruised because she's the Slayer. That I thought was really interesting because it's the first time being a Slayer has been presented as kind of potentially that there are downsides to it, and how that also makes it harder for her to be a normal girl in the world because she.
Oh yes, that's the first time that theme has come up in this show, Joel.
No, but like as in a sense that there's physically, mechanically,
yeah, sure,
there's potential downsides to it.
Yeah.
As if like this obviously isn't something, but say if it's almost as if they said Slayers were sterile or something. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not really something that they have in Buffy.
Yeah, I get you.
But the mental institution thing, it's such a fang wank, and it's such a jump the shark thing, but it's always interesting with certain canons to be like, what if this is all a dream?
Yeah.
There's actually a really well received episode of Deep Space Nine, which is the Star Trek series with the Black Station Commander. And he has an episode where he imagines he's a science fiction writer in the 50s and all the main casts are actually other writers who work with him, and he obviously experiences a lot of racism in that episode, and he creates Deep Space Nine as somewhere to escape, which is kind of like the Gene Roddenberry vision of a future where there isn't racism and everyone's working towards a common goal.
Just homophobia,
yeah, Jesus. But then the implication is Cisco, who's the captain, goes on not being certain whether he actually is still in his science fiction writer story or not.
Yeah, I got you, of course.
But it's quite tropic, but like with Buffy, I think with Buffy's such an unreliably narrated show, you could well believe that it all wasn't happening in some degree. And obviously when you introduce Dong later on, like Dong is like textually the narrative saying you can never trust anything that happens again. In some ways.
No, it is.
Because Dong even references Ted, and she remembers Ted even though she wasn't here.
Yeah, which is very, very weird.
And then the question, I think is more your side of the table from a philosophical point of view, is if reality was changed so that Dong believes she was there and everyone believes she was there, was she there to some degree? And how much of that does that ripple back, and how much does it matter?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Oh, important to note that Jenny and Giles do actually get back together by the end of this episode. Yeah, they're all kissing and stuff, and it's very sweet. And another thing actually is that Angel and Buffy in that scene where Angel's in it, where he's like telling her to be nice to Ted and stuff, they feature the Buffy and Angel theme music. So it's like that kind of like sad piano music. And I just think it's a really beautiful theme. It's great. I can't believe how close we're getting to Surprise Innocence, and I'm so excited. They're such good episodes.
One bum note I would mention as well is that having put so much effort into pointing out that the Org of Taraka would never stop coming to kill her in the last two prior, in this episode they just threw a line. It was like, oh yeah, their contract got cancelled, so they're not going to do that anymore, and they never appear again.
They're also like, Angel's connections have confirmed this. It's like, what fucking connection? He's a loner.
Yeah, exactly. All his other friends who he met at summer camping are definitely real.
Yeah.
And before we move off Corgi has this amazingly simple worldview which she presents, which is, why doesn't Buffy just have a license to kill because she's like a superhuman? And Willow's like, so you're talking about like a fascist society? And Corey's like, yeah, why can't we have one of those? Well, Corey, you got your wish.
Oh, here, actually, this is the first actor who's been listed as a special guest star in Buffy, was John Ritter, so that's cool. One of the things, Kate, and I'm not going to harp on this, is this episode kind of like exploring the whole anger issues that Buffy was talking about with Kendra last week. She was saying, my anger it benefits me, but in this episode, her anger causes her to, by her perspective, kill a man.
Yeah. So this never would happen to Kendra.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And again, I think that's what I'm saying. There's downsides to all of her strengths, and that's actually something important to bear in mind, that none of her strengths are exclusively strengths. They all have to be wielded correctly.
Yeah, you're right.
The only thing I mentioned is that this episode was filmed during the Halloween holiday that year, and they all turned up in costume for some of the scenes, or for some of the filming. But Kristen Sutherland came dressed as Ted's first wife in 1950s.
Yeah.
I Love Lucy gear, which I love. I love that so much.
And what did Buffy wear?
She was dressed as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz.
And who did she bring with her?
Her dog, Toto.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
Okay, so what's our death count for the week, Joel? As we're in the dusting.
The dusting. So the vampire stake by Buffy Summers at Sunnydale Park. Hold on a second, back up, reverse. I forgot to mention something very important. Giles and Jenny go to the park to stake a vampire. That's not why they go there, but that's what happens. And Jenny accidentally, while Giles is wrestling with a vampire, shoots him in the back with a crossbow bolt, which he says doesn't pierce him too deeply because he's wearing too many layers of tweed. And while the vampire is laughing at him, he pulls the crossbow bolt out of his kidney and stakes him with it.
Yeah.
It is possibly one of the most badass things any like non-power person does in this entire show. Is played for laughs. Very good.
Yeah, love it.
So Teg's first 4 wives who died in captivity, kind of a dark note there. Vampire dusted by Rupert Giles, and Ted Buchanan, the robot, deactivated by Buffy, which I think suggests that he could come back, but he doesn't.
He doesn't know, though. I think Willow does hold on to some parts, and that helps her understand the Buffy bot and turn Buffy bot good.
Like, this season gives so many escape hatches for later seasons, because I don't know how many times in later seasons they reference the fact that what's his face, Xander still has military knowledge from the Halloween episode,
yeah.
and that allows him to get intimate bases and all that. So they just use this whenever they need like an out. They just they disassemble this season and use parts of it.
It's true. Okay, and then fashion. I don't think there was any particularly interesting fashion notes in this episode from my perspective anyway.
No.
Willow's wearing a top with a crown on it at one point, and I was like, yeah, she's my queen.
Yeah, no, everyone was just kind of dressed like their usual trash in terms of the school kids.
Yeah.
But actually everyone else dressed, to be fair, Cordelia looked nice. Giles had a normal tie. Buffy, I think, probably dressed a little bit more, not pre-teeny, but like she dressed younger.
Yeah.
Slightly younger than her leather jacket and like fashionable combat.
She was constantly shot from above as well to make her look small and innocent and kind of like sulking a little bit, which is interesting.
And I can never really make out what Joyce is wearing. Like, it always looks great, but she doesn't have a look.
No, it's very mom.
Very mom, yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, so Brian, what is your score for this episode?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to let you go first because I suspect my rating out of is going to be what you have, and I'm going to write it down what I'm rating it. But yeah, I don't want to. I suspect what I'm about to say is what you have, so I'm going to let you go first because I have 2 options.
Okay, because I've actually just pulled it out of the air now, so it might not be.
Go on.
But I'm going to say 6.09 gigabyte hard drives.
Okay. That's so funny because that was my alternate for in case in case you chose my one. So I'm going to give it 6.0. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give this 5.3 sucking chest wounds.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Brian learned the phrase quote unquote sucking chest wound in this episode.
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. So all in all, a fun watch, and I think a welcome climb down from the both thematic and narrative density of the two-parter. Not the episode you would show people if you were trying to get them into Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Probably not. Though, I mean, like, it's mad, okay? This, What's My Line Part 1 and 2 happens, great episodes. Then these 2 episodes happen, and they're such lows. And then fucking Surprise and Innocent happens directly afterwards. And this season is such a roller coaster, but, like, it's just on the basis of how many highs it has. Like, this season is so fucking high quality. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, and also just as a last Buffy bit to mention, Buffy does imply that Joyce's acting brings very Stepford wifey at one point, and the Stepford Wives is a 1972 novel which has been made into a bucket load of films.
Most notably recently with Nicole Kidman, which had a gay Stepford in it, where he had a Stepford husband.
I think so, yeah, but the premise is basically that this neighborhood seems perfect, and it is, because they're all robots.
But the book itself only implies they're robots, but the movies since then have kind of gone further to suggest that they are in fact robots.
The movies are probably the more culturally remembered version of it, and they do kind of very specifically make it clear that they are robots.
Yeah, sure.
in many versions.
I think the Nicole Kidman one, they're actually cyborgs.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
yes.
Well, you can remix it in different ways.
Yeah,
we can talk about the distinction between robots, constructs, androids, cyborgs, and gynoids in some future episode.
I would prefer to never do that. Okay, go review us on iTunes if it still exists, because it sounds like iTunes is going to stop existing soon.
Yeah, I don't really know much about this, but you've told me that iTunes is being shut down.
Yeah, but they're going to have a new podcast service for iPhone users.
So for anyone who isn't super familiar with the intricacy of podcasts, like iTunes is the Google of podcasts, and every other podcast service connects to a search engine for the most part. So I don't know what happens to podcasts after this. Maybe something that makes it easier for small creators to become a bit more visible, because everyone knows that the iTunes algorithms are a weird sorcery about how you actually get onto the charts. You know?
Yeah, sure.
But while it still exists, like, comment, subscribe, and feature us on your MySpace, tell your friends, tell your milkman, and we will see you next week with Bad Eggs.
Bad eggs, yeah. Ugh.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us on Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys.
See ya.